Yep. Yep. I had to move something. I'm recording something right now. Just moved. Okay, bye.
Hi, you here?
I am.
Okay, perfect.
You sure this is going out on?
I'm going to double check, but it showed that we were live. I'm going to check right now.
Yeah. Then is there a council on that?
Yeah, there's 12 people joining us.
Good. And how do we know that they're talking to us? Is there a keyboard thing?
There's a live chat there function for them, and I will monitor it.
How do we see it?
I can send you the link.
You can see it. Let's just.
I can see it.
You can see it. That's fine.
Okay, I just need to pull up one more thing in case people are actually on LinkedIn. Yep, and I'm here too. There we go. So I can see both. I can see questions if they come in on LinkedIn, and I can see questions if they come in on Substack.
Okay. So you'll have to call that all out because I can't see them.
Yep, but I did it.
Okay. So we're live.
We're live.
We're live.
We're live. A lot of stuff this week.
Yes.
Where do you want to start?
All right. Start anywhere. Any topic. HSAs. You want to talk about HSAs?
Yes. Let's talk about HSAs. And why we're talking about HSAs is the Affordable Care Act, ACA, enhanced subsidies. So a lot of people are looking at that saying, this doesn't matter to me. I'm not on the exchange. I don't know what the big deal about this is. We shut the government down on it, yada, yada, yada. Right?
Yeah. So let's explain what this starts out as. So in 2020, because of COVID, the government, people who buy from the exchange, ACA, up to 400% of poverty number, get a subsidy to reduce.
It's actually more than that. Just more than the 400%.
Okay, whatever. There was a long-standing subsidy for ACA for people up to a certain level above poverty, and the government decided to free that up since we had COVID, and add more to help subsidize health insurance, and that those are to retire in January 1, 2026. So for the last several years, people have not been fully aware, who buy from the exchange, that their insurance costs have been going up because they've been covered by the subsidy, and so these are now going away. They were always planned to be retired. To some degree, they hid the cost of increased insurance, and so there was a fight to try to extend them. The challenge is that we could keep doing that and subsidizing it, but sooner or later we run out of money. And so part of the political argument is we have to pull the Band-Aid off, rip the Band-Aid off, and start solving this problem. The other part is we can't. It's too disruptive. Let's wait. And so sooner or later, the bad news has to be delivered.
Well, pause. And let me add more to that. Right now, all of the money goes to the health insurance company. All of this money goes to the insurance company.
So it goes to the insurance company, but as a result, people out-of-pocket dollars that they have to spend on insurance are less. So yes, it all goes to the subsidy. All goes to the insurance company.
They're out of pocket dollars for their insurance itself, and how much it costs them to pay insurance premium is less, but the deductibles and copays on these policies are very high. But my point is, none of this money that the government has been spending on quote unquote healthcare has been accessible by the consumer. It has been directly passed from the government to the insurance company on their behalf. That is a very important piece to this that people often overlook.
So so now there is a proposal to take $20 to $30 billion of what per year of the subsidy and redirect it to people who are on ACA, because that's who was getting the benefit before, who buy from the exchange, to take 20 to 30 of that billion and instead redirect directly to individuals to fund their HSA account. $1,000 for under 50 or so, and then $1,500 for over 50.
Yep, 50 to 64, basically.
And then there's also requirements, or we've introduced another concept that not many people are aware of called the copper plan, which is essentially catastrophic care, originally targeted for kids, 25-year-olds.
Under 30. You have to be under 30 in order to be allowed to buy a copper plan.
And so the intention is to allow that copper plan to be exposed to everybody?
Yes.
So now
you would be able to get the HSA dollars if you were on one of the exchange plans. You don't get the HSA dollars if you don't enroll in the exchange plan. So if you run out and get crowd health, because that's what everybody seems to be talking about right now, you cannot get this HSA money.
So if you're on the ACA and you're doing this, so that's what we're talking about. But the interesting thing here is it is not just fueling the HSA dollars, but it's also giving consumers the option to buy a copper plan. Now, the reason why that's important is because many of the plans, once the subsidy's gone, are going up 30+%. So consumers are hitting their limit. Those that buy on the exchange are hitting their limit, and they didn't even know how they were going to buy a bronze plan.
Correct.
Now they can buy a copper plan, which basically addresses acute care and doesn't really effectively address chronic care.
Correct.
And so here's the other little trick here that many people may not be happy with, but if they were going to pay $1,200 a month under a bronze plan for husband and wife, under a copper plan they might pay like $700.
Yeah, I haven't priced it. This is something that my husband and I
pretend for a second it's cheaper, and so they're going to be on a copper plan, but they're not going to cover chronic. But so they've got the $1,000 to $1,500 is coming in, plus the fact that they likely are going to buy a copper plan, which means now the function of chronic care, what they're going to do for chronic care, is solved either because they're healthy and they're not worried about chronic disease, so they don't need to fund the cost of diabetes, or they do have diabetes and the responsibility, they may still get their drugs through a discount program through the PBM or something like that, but they're out of pocket. They are now going to have to fund their chronic disease strategy from a combination of their savings going to a copper plan, from
and
their
the HSA dollars,
and most people who already were on a bronze plan were paying a lot of cash anyway, so they were already in the market of covering some of their chronic disease costs. But essentially, I think so. What have we left anything out in terms of the core what's going on here?
No. So I think to distill it very briefly is we have millions of people that either will no longer be getting the enhanced subsidy, and there's a very defined portion of these folks that are getting these enhanced subsidies. It's actually an interesting group. It's, economically, we're talking those most affected by the loss of the enhanced subsidies or the redistribution are those in the 150,000 family of four, $150,000 annual income range. So we are not talking about Medicaid eligible. We are not talking about the person making $40,000 a year for a family of four. We're talking solid middle class folks.
So I'm a plumber. I run a plumbing business, or I am a consultant,
or I'm an entrepreneur and I do a really good job of tax write-offs, right? Like it is a very big contingent of consumers that are not helpless. We're not talking about people for the most part that don't have a home or, right? Because a lot of times people conflate the discussion with social determinants of health and, well, until people have stable housing, this doesn't matter. So I just want to clarify that. And I think the other really important piece here is these folks, what I keep hearing in the healthcare industry is, even my husband did this last night. Well, that's not enough money. So you're basically saying that somebody's going to lose $1,000, because this is what we're talking about. It can be $1,000 to $2,000 a month impact to people a month in premium subsidy that's being lost, like in that sweet spot. Okay. So let's just say you've lost $12,000 in premium subsidy, and how everybody kind of sees it is, I'm losing $12,000 to gain $1,000. That's not okay. That's not remotely close. That's not holding a candle. Like, this is the whole argument, right? That is complete. That is a very myopic, traditional legacy way of looking at it. I see it completely differently, which is this entire contingent of people has been getting this money, and it has been sent directly to insurance companies that are not offering any benefit to reverse or avoid their chronic disease. There has been zero support with that money to do anything with it for them. So they have just taken it and moved on, right? And they have had to contend with whatever's wrong, right? All of it themselves out of pocket. These plans have very high deductibles, very high co-insurance, right? You may get a couple of visits included, but like we're talking, you're spending a lot of money out of pocket. So there is a lot of withheld care in this population. This is not employers where you got a $10 copay to go do whatever it is that you want. Okay, this is very important though. So what we really are talking about is a brand new market. So if all of a sudden millions of people, to your point, have access to $1,000 to $1,500 in a year, sure, you can look at it and say, well, that doesn't offset a loss of $1,000 a month in premium. Like, sure, look at it that way. Or you can look at it and say, holy crap, we just gave millions of people $1,000 to $1,500 to go after their chronic disease. And then there's this notion like, well, they're not going to do it. They're not doing it today. What's going to change? Well, what's going to change is all of a sudden they wake up and go, oh, now I really don't have insurance to cover my chronic disease, but now I have $1,000 to $1,500 to actually approach it. What do I do? And to your point, I now took a true catastrophic plan. I backed up to the copper plan, right? So that I could take that, so I'd have this extra money. And now I'm going to be able to use this money towards my chronic disease.
And if it's, so one of the concerns people is like, well, nobody will do anything about this. Well, before there was nothing in the healthcare insurance industry for the bronze plans and the silver plans. When they're getting subsidized by the government, they're not a huge amount of motivation for the insurance company to back down on the costs. And if these patients look helpless, there are people willing to subsidize this effort. I mean, the government was subsidizing this, basically saying people won't change, so we need to put a subsidy in to deal with the fact that they won't change and fix their chronic disease. And when we look at chronic disease, we know that chronic disease is about $500,000 of lifetime revenue for the health industry. And part of that ends up being revenue for the health insurance industry. And so if you look at the group of people of who cares about the patient, I would argue that there are not a huge amount of incentives for health insurance or healthcare to end the chronic disease treatment market. Nor is there much interest in government to do that, because government, there are a bunch of people that are like, oh, you gave me a subsidy. Thank you. I love you for this. But none of these people are transmitting the message on chronic disease. But all of these people are saying, well, the thing is the patient won't change, so we have to do this for them.
Or like we just got there's two comments that came through. $1,000, $1,500 doesn't seem adequate for insurance to cover medical needs, right? Well, right, because today it costs, okay, today, if you are a type 2 diabetic, it costs X to cover how we treat chronic disease, how we go after chronic disease.
That's the standard care for chronic disease, let's say type 2 diabetes. So right now, the practical applied care for chronic disease is $500,000 lifetime cost, so whatever that is per year. So call that between $10,000 and $30,000 a year until you pass away. Plus, the current system of delivery is missing 40% of people with diabetes are not even being treated for it. So, which is creating other contingent costs.
Correct.
And so that is the basic care. So we're spending a huge amount of money, leaving out 40% of the people, and still costing $500,000 over your lifetime that's going to be insured and covered by the system
with very low quality of life. And then the other point that was made in the comment was chronic disease management has never made sense on any level, long-term across the board. There are many older medical professionals who are echoing what you just said. So, and there is a little bit of a delay. So I can't tell you exactly what it is that you said, but what I will add to what you said is that is the exact point to be made, is that we are willing to pay $500,000 today. It does not need to cost. Okay. And that is also in a model when you talk to anybody in the healthcare system. Sorry, Carter, but I've spent 20 years in value-based care banging my friggin' head against the wall. And we now have a chance to get away from that. So you have an entire healthcare system who's standing there saying, it costs this much because we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this to manage the disease. And then when you say, hey, did you know that you can actually use behavioral modification and lifestyle support over 9 weeks for $800, like fully loaded in sort of like the traditional model, right? Or a $1,200, whatever, right? And you can pretty much reverse 75% of the people that have chronic disease. And you can basically take 60 to 70% of that $500,000 out for the lifetime by doing that. They go, yeah, but there's not an ROI for that because I lose the revenue as the health system when I do that. I don't make enough money for that to make sense.
Let's restate this. So the system B model of how to deal with chronic disease is spend $500,000 over your lifetime once you're identified as having a chronic disease. Ever increasing insurance cost, some of which has to be subsidized by the government, which is taxpayers, with no end in sight, and 40% of the people who should get the standard of care to keep its cost down are not, and so they collapse at the later part. Once diabetes finally gets them, they lose legs, they go into a very catastrophic. They get into a very bad situation of
right. You're on dialysis. Yes.
Yeah, because the 500,000 is the median, and it not the median is the average, and it ranges from 200,000 up to 2.4 million. So all of a sudden now they're the 2.4 million cost. So that's system B. And the answer is we need more subsidy to keep the system B approach to chronic disease going. The system C approach says, well, could we prevent it? And people are like, it can't change people's behavior. Well, let's just put that aside for a second. The system C approach is, can we figure out a different way to do this? We have said it's partially food is health, but that's not just food is health. Now, very specifically, we are aware of programs that for $3,000 to $9,000 can get people A1C compliant for $3,000 to $9,000. It's a little unclear what you do to keep them, what the cost is to maintain them at that level. But if it costs you $3,000 to $9,000 to get them compliant, if you look at a lifetime value of that, that's maybe $100,000 to $200,000. And that's without any innovation around it. So we have programs that we are seeing that have emerged over the last few years that are called Gen 1 treatment programs. We have the introduction of GLP-1s. We have regenerative agriculture, which is getting a $700 million innovation grant out of the government right now to try to drive more. We have enhanced care delivery methods with agentic AI. So we're talking about, we know of programs that $3,000 to $9,000 program costs get you A1C compliant, which essentially addresses a dramatic amount of chronic disease. And we know that there are technologies that are readily available that can probably lower that cost. And that's just the program cost. So now we're saying that we used to be in a realm where we were spending $500,000, that in the first generation of behavior modification changes is more like $100,000 to $200,000 lifetime. And we have a roadmap to get that lower. And that's more of the system C concept, which is let's get it so that you never get the chronic disease, or if you get the chronic disease, that's for getting somebody compliant who already has chronic disease. And then the prevention components of it, the thing about both these programs to treat chronic disease using behavioral modification, $3,000 to $9,000, and the tools that we're aware of that are coming down that prevent you from ever having chronic disease, are not delivered through healthcare, which means you don't have to wait for a doctor to go through 12 years of med school. You don't have to go see a doctor. You don't have to deal with the limited access to PCPs. You can take a broad range of people, whether they're MPs or whether they're psychologists or whether they're technology. You have a wide range of people, grocery stores that can help deliver these programs. And so you now have solved the accessibility problem. And if we concentrate on reducing the friction around this, we would expect the cost to go down. So now,
okay,
I need
to go back to your roadmap.
And one final thing, which I just want to put the anchor in the point, is the one final thing is markets succeed when there is cash in the hand of the consumer.
Exactly.
Which is price discovery. And the argument is, well, you're not capable of figuring out how to do this.
Yes, exactly.
And that's sort of like saying you can't figure out how to run your iPhone, or you can't figure out how to manage your taxes, or you can't figure out how to raise your kids. It's the one person who has skin in the game here beyond anybody else is the person with chronic disease. And I think it's, if you have the probability, what's the probability that person won't do that versus the probability that they will? I bet that if you empower them with the dollars and let them start making the decisions, and through those decisions help the people offering the products offer them better and reduce the friction, that you will converge on a better, cheaper solution for solving chronic disease versus the system B solution, which is ignore the end user, fuel the health insurance companies. They will solve this whole problem, and maybe someday they'll get around to doing it in a way that satisfies the customer. But right now they're missing 40% of the customers because of the way they deliver care. I'm gonna shut up now. Go. You got a point that I cut you off on, and I was on a roll.
You're allowed. I just want to point out two things and sort of put a end cap or a whatever. I'm going to highlight a couple things and emphasize a couple things you said. So somebody made the point, medical professionals are saying that the patient won't change their habits. And depending on the government and medical systems for their quality of life, health needs, and that it's even to their health eating habits. I vehemently disagree with that now. I used to think that. I used to believe that. But that goes back to your point, Carter, of system B versus system C. We have a healthcare system that is built to make money on sickness and disease management. That is what we have built the system on. Like it or not, that is it. That is the economics of the system. And so for the standard medical professional to be able to say patients won't change, right? Because that's based on their experience and on their lens. If you talk to you and I,
they see the patients. I said I would shut up,
but they don't have the toolkit. I just want to be really clear with people. The majority, the 90%, 99% of medical professionals today have not been given the toolkit to help people become healthy, either financially, knowledge-based, education, you name it. They do not have the toolkit to be able to do it. If you go to the ACLM conference, you go to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine conference, and you stand around those 2,000 people, you realize that it is entirely possible, and in some ways it is unbelievable that we haven't done what we are capable of doing, which is obliterating the chronic disease epidemic. Now, I understand that there is a lot of work to do. I understand there is education. I understand we need to change the food system. Like, I am completely glossing over massive shifts that have to happen. But I just want to be really clear that legacy system B has all the reason monetarily, fiscally, professionally, infrastructure-wise to stand behind the point that the consumer won't change when in fact they very much will. Because to your point, at the end of the day, people want to be healthy.
So
we've just designed it so that they really feel like they can't be, and we basically kicked them out. There are some questions coming in, so I need to get there.
Well, so to build a couple points here. So there's a certain time in all war where you burn the bridges on your retreat.
Now we're at war.
Well, no, you want to burn the bridges on retreat. We're not going back to system B.
No, you and I are not going back to B. There will, if I have to do that, I think I will become a high-end travel agent officially. I will not do this.
And this is not a complaint against, look, the system B was designed to the environment it had. We've got a new environment. Every medical professional who's dedicated is dedicated to the people they see in front of them. And the people they see in front of them are the people who can't figure out how to get the behavior change done. The people they don't see are the people who are healthy and know how to deal with the behavior change. So the healthcare professionals are dealing with
good point.
They have a selection bias.
Agreed.
They have a selection bias to the people who have the hardest time dealing with it. So
okay. So
I respect their viewpoint on the thing, but they're not professional. They don't know how to direct the behavior changes, you say.
Well, it's not been fair. Okay, I don't want to your point. I mean, that actually, it made me seem really callous to all my friends that are clinicians. They have been beaten down by the system. Yeah. They have been not supported in changing behavior, any of this stuff, right? So like, that part, like, I don't want to sound negative that way. So like, right, it's a rearranging of everything in order to support it. Now, I want to go to a question that was asked, because this is a really important B of shifting from system B, a really important point of shifting from system B to system C. And then I think we have to pause on the ACA stuff and move into the other programs that have been announced. And I think it's an important sequencing of conversation, because to me, the ACA is the most significant part of unlocking System C because of exactly what you said, which is we are giving the consumer dollars to start making their own decisions and to start testing what works for them. And they have never had that ability. And this brings me to the question. So the question was, do these changes include mandatory price transparency? It's absolutely impossible today to find out how much a procedure or treatment will cost. So what I will say is that the answer is no, they do not mandate that. However, anybody who's listening to this or anybody who listens to it in the future would say, well, if I'm spending $1,000, right, on something, I need to know it's going to work. And what I will say is all of the solutions that are going to come out that are going to be able to solve chronic disease for $1,000, because let me tell you, they are out there. You don't need to go spend $1,000 on an MRI to somehow, like, meaning the things that are not transparent today are System B things, and they are not going to be the tools that people are going to rely upon that are in System C. Those innovative tools will be very transparent, and it will be very intuitive to be able to use them. And in some ways, the fact that System B is not going to become transparent and is going to fight it tooth and nail is going to actually accelerate System C, because System C is going to say, I got you covered, man. Your A1C, you come join me, and your A1C is going to drop to 6.5 in 12 weeks.
So let's talk about it. So we have a very distinct group here. Let's call them the early adopters of System C.
Okay.
What do they have now? They already, as you say, they run a plumbing business, or we're talking about a distinct group of people. We're not talking about people on Medicare. We're talking about people that are 400
under 65.
Under 65. These are people who are sort of run businesses, dual income. They various kinds of things. So they're struggling. Yeah. I don't want to say life is easy, but they are good. They are economic optimizers.
Yep.
So, boom, that's one thing you have. The second thing you have is they're going to a copper plan. So they have, call it, they have like $4,000 a month in their budget, $4,000 more because they've gone to copper for the year. They've got $1,000 in their HSA, and that $4,000 can now be tax-free, also put in their HSA. So they may not have had an HSA before. Now they have a tax-deferred account in which they can accumulate something. So we got to call it 15 million people who already are economic optimizers, who now have these dollars. They call it the $1,000 plus maybe another $4,000. Plus the other money they were spending out of pocket before is still in their hands, and they are more responsible for negotiating price. So now you have 1,500 people in the market, 15 million people, in the market, who economic optimizers who recognize that they do have a concern about their long-term care. They may not be totally on it, but now they are in negotiating in the marketplace and saying, I got to do something here. I got to make sure I don't get to diabetes. At the same time, we have better offers to eliminate diabetes. So we have just established the game, the early adopter game. Hold on. We just established the early adopter game in which these consumers are equipped and focused to be economic optimizers at the same time that we're over-indexing on new technology that displaces the old chronic disease management, and that these people can now get into a scrum and get price set.
Yes. Now, so now let's talk about, I'm going to pause this for a second. I could literally we could spend the entire hour riffing about ACA, and we could spend another hour. We already have ourselves, right? But I did promise on the Substack to give a debrief on a number of things. So I do feel like we have to. However, okay, but this is all linked. So you just teed me up to talk about the first thing I'm going to talk about. Okay, but I just want to close out on something really important. In all the things that we've talked about, only only the Republican plan of giving people $1,000 to $1,500 a year in their HSA has the potential to unlock the consumer market easily, like to empower the consumer. Just out of all the things that we're going to talk about today, okay, just to be clear, this is the piece that really disintermediates and unlocks money for the consumer direct. The other things create tailwind for new innovations to come into System B, but it's this ACA piece that really hits the idea that consumers suddenly have new money in the market, that there's really this new money for market creation. Okay. So I just want to be clear. We're now going to jump into these other things.
Well, I don't want to jump that. Sorry. We really do need to do a step of really defining these economic optimizers. To some degree, they're the pre-chronic, but they're sort of the 30 to 40-year-olds matter a lot.
Okay. I will push back on you and say, I believe there are two very distinct groups in this. And I know you and I sort of disagree on this. I do agree with you wholeheartedly on the pre-chronic. I also believe that if anything, I need to say two things on this. I think the bigger opportunity is actually those with chronic disease, because those folks have an even hotter burning platform to have to deal with, right? Because they're like, oh crap, I just lost basically what I thought was my coverage, and now I've got to figure out how to manage my condition with $1,500.
Yes, yeah. I don't disagree with you. My only frustration on those with it is that it's slightly different market. But let's put a boundary around this. Hold on. So, people how can the people advocating this bill, how can they possibly think this solves healthcare? They don't. I know they don't. I've talked to them. They don't. It's like you've got this $3.6 trillion market opportunity here. No. $20 billion, $30 billion into HSAs is not going to solve the whole problem.
It only took you a year to beat this into my head, by the way.
But it is a step in the direction that unlocks the greatest power we have in the United States that no other country exhibits, which is an energized consumer making economic decisions and an energized innovation force working together around price to optimize and allocate resources in the most effective way. So that, call it a catalyst. As soon as that crowd starts getting already the senators, I've already got a request this 2 days ago from a senator who basically said, okay, now, once we do this, what's the next thing it's going to trigger? Can you help us start thinking through what other avenues we should be opening up? And this really builds on our early work during the summer, where we said to Kennedy and to Rollins, let's focus on soil. Let's improve soil health to improve human health, which is exactly what he said. Exactly what he said. And what others have said this too, but it is exactly what he said on the regenerative health pitch that he did the other day when they offered $700 million. And then if you increase nutritional density in crop to make people healthier, and then he also said have outcome-based measures on human health, which we're doing with Audacious. So it's lined up. Either we're aligned with him or he's aligned with us, but it is lined up perfectly along lines of, now we've got to get consumers energized. If you get consumers energized, then they're going to buy the nutrient-dense food. If they start buying the nutrient-dense food, they're going to open up the supply chains to demand the nutrient-dense food, which then gives an opportunity for agricultural people who are trying to verticalize into this space, or grass-fed beef that are trying to verticalize in the space, to solve their problem, which is we spent $80 billion on ag tech innovation over the last 15 years, but it didn't get pulled through because the consumer demand signal wasn't coming through. Exactly. Now we're opening up the consumer demand signal. If you think about this in terms of what, independent of whether you want to impeach these people or whatever. The message that's coming out is fix soil health, fix nutrient density, fix chronic disease, empower people at the other end so that they can start procuring down these paths and open up these markets. And then as you open up these markets, the early adopters start showing what can be done. And then everybody else starts realigning what they need to do because they realize there's a shift. And the final bow I'll put on this is it happens now or it happens later, because these healthcare costs are just going up and nobody else has a suggestion on how to get them to go down except rationing. And thank God we're not going to ration.
Okay, so you just got totally dissed.
I got dissed?
Does Carter, sorry for stating, but does Carter have to keep dominating the dialogue?
I'll shut up. Sorry.
This is also Mrs. Brown's project, right? Sorry, I had to give you the feedback from the peanut gallery.
Okay. I'll shut up.
No, for those of you listening that don't know the Ellen and Carter show, just know that this is like how we live. And then I will get on a roll, and then Carter will just sit there and be like, oh my God, I want to get a word in edgewise. And we'll do this by ourselves for hours and record the entire thing. So it's really, we are very much in a like, it's a good relationship here, just so everybody knows. So I just want to step in for a second and say, okay, you've tied a bow on that. We've talked about the consumer. So let's just go back to the idea of market creation. I think that's what's really important for me here is I feel like I woke up this week and I started here, and then I'm ending the week going, holy cow, I have been waiting my entire life for this to happen. And it's like all of these different things that need to fall into place to cause market creation to happen happened every day this week. And exactly like you said, it's as if all of this, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to see. This is what I want to see. This is part of it. So part of market creation is consumer signaling, right? Is the consumer being able to signal to the market what they want and be able to test it, to be able to get their hands on what they want, and to be able to send signals back to say, this is working, this is not working, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. Okay. We now have the potential of that happening. And I will say, honestly, it is only a matter of time. I mean, that's, and quite frankly, even without the ACA subsidies going away, it's just, this is inevitable, like you said, Carter. Like, I mean, and people are just getting pushed and pushed to have to spend more and more of their own money anyways. So high deductible health plans majority of people have them. So there's already this money in HSAs. It's not just about the enhanced subsidies. Okay, now, next part of this is market innovation. So one of the biggest problems we've had is that consumers within healthcare have not had access to these innovations because these innovations are not billable in the traditional fee-for-service environment, or are they able to be administered by the types of clinicians that you've defined that are not the traditional, I went to med school, I went to residency, like the whole thing, right? Okay. So what we've had to do is healthcare, System B, has been the intermediary for the consumer to connect the dots between the consumer and the point solution that could solve their problem for much less. So what's had to happen is the healthcare system, the System B system, if I could say system a little bit more, the current legacy system has said, that's really great, and that may end chronic disease, but there's no ROI for me. So I'm not going to bring you into my system and then give you to my customer. And almost every innovative solution out there right now, other than things like Function Health, which is why they're starting to pick up a lot of steam, right? Or they have, is most of them, consumers, they will never see the light of day to the consumer because they can't sell into the health system, and they're all B2B. Because there's not enough of a direct-to-consumer market. People aren't willing to spend the money. Okay, now there's money. Now there's consumers. But we still have a problem. These innovations, this was before this week, these innovations can't go direct to the consumer because there's a requirement for Medicare, for the Medicare market, for example. There's a requirement that Medicare won't cover it. Okay, so now let's go to what happened, the next thing that happened this week. So the next thing that happened this week it was actually earlier. Another thing is called Access, ACCESS. I'm not even going to go into what the acronym means. It's on the Substack, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Bottom line, what the government is saying is if you're a Part B Medicare supplier, you can get an outcomes-based payment. You can apply to get an outcomes-based payment for you to provide your service to the consumer and get paid by Medicare for that service in an outcomes-based way. And oh, by the way, and you can go direct to the Medicare fee-for-service member, beneficiary, right? So like you can go direct to them. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to deploy a wearable that's not FDA approved right now, we have this new pilot program that we've created called Tempo, which is going to allow you to sort of get around that FDA approval process if your device meets our needs. So you have literally opened up an entire market, which is half of the Medicare beneficiaries in this country. If you're approved to be an access participant, if your product, your innovation is approved as an access participant, you now have access to the entire Medicare fee-for-service market, and you don't have to go through System B to provide it to the consumer. It is game on.
What are they doing? The part that I didn't get is on the outcome base. So like I can sell this service, and if your A1C goes down, I get paid?
You will apply to CMS for an outcomes-based payment. And we don't know what that outcomes-based payment will be today. They have not provided that methodology.
For example, I mean, there'll probably be dozens of these, but for example, it's like, if you do this, the outcome is A1C reduction. And so Medicaid would pay you for, so that might be a service, but what would it be for like an outcome based for wearables?
Well, you would probably integrate your wearables in. Like it would be a life, like I don't see CMS just like suddenly giving some random wearable. Like there's going to have to be a lifestyle behavioral change kind of modification built into that it's going to produce an outcome.
And have they expressed at all what they think the outcomes are that they care about?
Plus, a wearable itself can't be a Part B Medicare supplier. Like you have to be a Part B Medicare supplier in order to apply to be an access participant.
And so would Yuri be able to?
Yes, he is already a Part B supplier. He could apply for access.
So
that's Nudge Health. For anybody wondering, that's something called Nudge Health.
Yeah, so Nudge Health for $3,000 to $5,000, they can typically get you compliant on A1C.
Oh, it's way less than that. It's like $99 a month. So I mean, you could pay $1,200.
And you think that they would have to just prove it on a population level? Like here's a study that shows that the outcome's positive, and
the way that CMS, interestingly enough, so CMS released the access model with Tempo. So these are two new models that are sort of side by side. Right now they look inextricably linked, but I can only imagine that's not the plan, or you wouldn't create two, right? You just create one. So obviously they plan on using Tempo for something else as well. So you have that. You also have another model called Elevate that came out yesterday, which is even more exciting. Well, I think they're equally exciting. Honestly, I guess they're equally exciting for different reasons. But that model, it is very explicit that they plan to only accept, they're only going to pick participants that have proven success already. When you read the access regs, they do not say that. So that leads me to believe that you will be able, just like a regular ACO application, you'll be able to say, I do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And you're willing to take the financial risk by accepting the outcomes-based payment. So it's really on you to whether or not it makes sense for you to take the money.
At an end of one level.
Correct. But to me, the most significant part of access, and this is what everybody in healthcare is missing. Everybody in healthcare, not everybody. I mean, there's a few people I really love who got the message on this one. But 99% of the people that are out there slinging out all of their thoughts around access, and God love us all. I used to do the same damn thing. I'm a consultant. I was like, oh, sweet. I can sell work. The truth is that healthcare is missing it because they're going, oh, this is another variation in the theme. It doesn't work. I'm not going to get enough money. It doesn't cover it. I'm only getting this $100 thing, blah, 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 blah. What they're not realizing is there's a whole new system of competitors that is now going to go after the exact same consumers that until today, healthcare is taken for granted. Healthcare is like, well, grandma always goes to the primary care physician, and then she goes to the endocrinologist, and then she goes and gets her dialysis, and she does her wound care, and she goes to the podiatrist, right? And now all of a sudden, who's our friend that has he has the diabetes center that's next to the Publix in Georgia? It's like, I feel he's probably like, please say my name right so people understand what I'm doing. So he's opened a direct to consumer diabetes clinic that's like, a really great place to go. It's a membership model. You pay, I don't know, $100 a month, whatever. They treat you for your diabetes. You don't feel like a bad person. They help you. Now all of a sudden he has free reign to that market, right? I mean, he kind of does today, but you know what I'm saying? Like, now Mrs. Jones is at the Publix and she sees that place and she's like, I think I'm going to stop in. And when she stops in, he says, oh yeah, you can come to us and Medicare will pay us your membership fee.
Well, and the outcome-based, one of the things is significant here is it's outcome-based. And this was
right.
When we met with Rollins and Kennedy, they've consistently said outcomes-based. We will pay, government will put dollars in if there's an outcomes-based result. And then if you look at what happened in the $500 billion for rural, they too did that with a declining balance. So I think what we'll see is outcomes-based declining balance, meaning the intention is to off-ramp outcome-based into the marketplace. And basically, I hope, at least this is how I see System C, is all of the chronic disease-related costs, or what you always call an oil change. They're the maintenance. You got to change the oil in your car. There's a certain, everybody has a certain maintenance level problem that needs to be dealt with. Correct. But really, insurance is, I've got this thing that nobody thought I would have that's expensive to solve, and it happens to only a few people. It's actuarially based. But a lot of chronic disease can affect many, many, many people. It's not really a good insurance product. It is a good discount program. Like, there's a buyer's club, there's a group of people, there's a certain cost to get into these people for customer acquisition. Lily has said this. Lily said, we've got our customer acquisition costs to sell people GLP-1s is quite high. If we could get that lower, we would lower the price of the product. So as we get a distinct group of people who are either pre-chronic or chronic,
very good point.
The efficiencies will come from bundling. So what you might see is Kroger says, we want to differentiate nutritional products to attract those with chronic disease and put them into a $100 a month program that deals with their nutritional quality and maybe also gives them what looks like an effective discount on better food, but really is sort of covered in the margins from the $100 a month.
Agreed.
And then we'll deal with service delivery to get it down. And so the consumer's happy because they've offset their concern and risk on their health insurance. And in a sense, because of the bundling, they're not making the decision separately of a program and figuring out what program and separately what vegetables are right. Kroger can manage that because they've got the POS data, they've got your data, they've got the supply chain data. They can go negotiate with suppliers to make sure that certain products are there and they can negotiate price. And they can concentrate on the 40 or 50 SKUs that crowd should be buying.
Correct.
And optimize it to be a package around nutrition.
So let's, for anybody that's here until noon, I can stay a little bit longer, but anybody who's here till noon, let's hit the last couple. There's 2 more to hit. Then we'll go back and tie these together for anybody that can stay on.
We'll just cut it off at noon just to be peaceful with everybody.
Okay, well, then we're going to let them down, but we'll do a part 2. So
Maybe.
the access model to me just gave a whole new market of offerings that can end and reverse chronic disease, including partnerships that most don't even think about as being possible. Because now you take somebody that applies to be a Part B, they qualify and can be a Part B Medicare supplier. They decide that they're going to partner with Kroger, right? Kroger could even position themselves to be Part B in some creative manner, right? And now all of a sudden you've created a food as health product for the masses in Medicare, and you don't have to deal with this whole food as medicine thing. Like now you've completely changed the game because you've actually acknowledged that you have a market to yourself. I now can step outside. I can be completely removed from system B, from the current healthcare system. Yeah. And I can say, these are the pieces, parts that I need in system C to deliver what the consumer wants, which is to end their chronic disease. And I can deliver that to them because I'm going to get paid to do it. And it doesn't have to be a fee for service billable CPT code or an ICD-9. I can go after what I want to go after as long as I've met the rules of being a Medicare Part B supplier and I feel that the payment is sufficient. And go back to the very beginning of this conversation, which is we can all sit here and say it costs $500,000 for the lifetime of type 2 diabetes, or we can actually go, wait a minute, how much does it really cost to do that? And how can I integrate the amount of money that people spend on food already and re-engineer? We could get to your dream and my dream, our collective dream of it becomes hard to make a bad decision at the grocery store. Okay. So now we've given, in my opinion, we've just disintermediated health. We've opened the floodgates for that to happen for half of the Medicare population. Anybody that's a Medicare beneficiary that is not taking a Medicare replacement plan, it's free. That is
how
free.
Many people is that?
No, I can't even. Don't even make me quote that number right now. It's ridiculous amounts of people. I mean, the healthcare revenue on that population is $1.5 million to 2 million. I mean, trillion, $1 trillion and a half to 2 trillion. So, anyways, okay. So let's just hold on. So that's access. So we've hit the HSA stuff. We've hit access. Now let's go to Elevate. So this was announced yesterday. And I woke up this morning so excited about this because anybody who knows me knows I am a huge voice for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the 6 pillars of health and that board certification. I have been trying to support all the people out there that are pushing the boulder uphill on behalf of lifestyle medicine. Martin, Caitlin, Susan, Padmaja, Kate, I could go on and on. Gebra, Ajay, Kushik, everyone out there. I'm sorry if I didn't mention your name. There are thousands and thousands, Prasanthi. And so here's the important thing. I have been trying to help health systems that have downside risk, right? They either have their own health plan, they are obviously self-insuring their employees, maybe they have an enhanced track or an ACO REACH, right? They have real insurance risk. And for those populations, they need to eliminate chronic disease. They have a real financial benefit to ending chronic disease. Okay. In those cases, I've been trying to support those that want to scale up their lifestyle medicine programs and see it as an intervention and not as a fee-for-service revenue opportunity. And that has been the biggest barrier, is that the current system B legacy thinking of healthcare is I need to bill all of these codes in order to offset the cost of having the staff to deliver these lifestyle medicine intervention programs, right? The Elevate model came out and said, we're going to pick 30 people. We're going to give them each $3 million. They have to already have a lifestyle medicine program in place. They have to be able to show that they can demonstrate outcomes, right? Back to your point, Carter, about outcomes. We're going to give them $3 million each for 3 years to track the outcomes of their program and also pay for the things with that $3 million that Medicare doesn't cover, AKA all of this complaint about that gap of I can't get the money to set up the infrastructure, to set up the staff because there's not enough for me to be able to bill fee for service, right? Government is saying we'll give you $3 million for 3 years. That is huge. It can go to health systems, ACOs, tribal organizations, CHCs, FQHCs, you name it.
How are they going? Do we know how they're going to decide yet?
No, right now they've just outlined what looks like, I can imagine a really important piece to it is the outcomes of the program that you already have. So they aren't looking for brand, like this is important. This is really important is I look at each of these programs and there is a lot of strategy in all of this, right? It's like, they don't want to just open up this money to the masses to replicate the system or continue the system we already have. They're saying we have got to do this differently, and we're earmarking this money for those that are doing it differently today and are going to do it differently in the future.
We saw that certainly in the rural health thing, where it was very clear that if you come in with an existing program, we're going to bounce it.
Exactly. So this is huge. So $100 million. I haven't been able to sit with it long enough to make sure that it's not $100 million a year. There's 2 cohorts that they're going to choose. The first cohort is going to be in 2026. It's going to be chosen. I believe it starts in June or July. The notice of funding opportunity will be released, I would assume, in January or February. And then there will be another cohort picked the following year. What I haven't been able to sit and read is it 30 per year and 100 million per year, or is it 30 the total and blah, 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 blah. But bottom line, it's a really big friggin' deal. And I personally, professionally want to know the good guys out there. So please reach out to us if you know of a really solid program that has just struggled within the organization to get, sort of get escalated, but the program or elevated, but the program itself is very successful. I actually have a vision, and I haven't even had a chance to reach out to leadership at ACLM to make sure I'm not like doing what somebody's already doing. I want to actually create a cohort of providers that are already offering this on an individual basis, that they can come together under one application. Now, whether or not CMS will allow this, but I think that would be really wise, is that CMS allows these docs to come together that are already proving it, to prove it together as one of the 30, so that we don't pit them against each other, because there are so many out there. But that's for another day. So that's Elevate. And then let me end it. I know we're a little bit over, but everybody still seems
I don't care about the time. Let's just keep going.
Okay.
And there may be comments. Do we have comments that we haven't covered?
Well, I'll go back to that. Yes. But let's jump for a second for the last piece, because I know a lot of folks that are here. We have a big audience. I know a lot of folks are probably here to hear about the 700 million on the regen side. So I do want to hit that a bit, and then we can kind of make sure everybody's got I'll go back into the questions, et cetera.
Yeah, go. You want to dive in on that? I haven't even had a chance to read the regen thing yet.
So it's 700. I've only read it myself. I know if Erin was here, I'd have her probably jump in, because she wrote a really thorough post on it yesterday. I mean, I have gone into it. It's 700 million. And in the way I've read it is that it's 700 million per year. And it is for both existing and new farmers that want to go regen. So they're clear about that. And it is meant to be, again, kind of this outcomes. It's got to be outcomes. And then they want to see regen in so it's a big push towards conservation through regenerative practices. So they're saying it needs to be all dimensions. So it's not just nutrient density, it's addressing water. Let me pull it up. I'll pull it up right now.
Yeah, because the early versions, we were drafting early versions of this amongst the community.
Correct.
We were around increased soil health metrics. I think
it's land, labor, and water.
The conversation a little bit on BLM land is, can you improve water retention so that you have less downstream flooding? So there's an economic, this is being thought about, not just nutrient density, but if BLM land doesn't absorb water land, well, then it rolls downhill and creates floods, and that has other economic impacts. So the way in which this is being thought about in terms of outcomes and economic impact are things like that you get environmental. They've moved the environmental concerns to things like flooding rather than purely like carbon in the air.
Yes.
To sort of step through it a little bit more.
So they have said, I mean, I will just hit on this and you can comment on it. Again, like you said, we've been part in the background of a lot of this stuff. It's just kind of wild to just see it all hitting in the same week before the holidays. Especially given that the government was shut down. Like I have to say, like, I know that there's a lot of frustration with the administration, but when I focus on the things that you and I are working on, I am
it's all.
So a couple people are saying, can we do a part 2 on this, or are we recording? So I will say this is being recorded, and we will publish it out to the Substack. But I am happy. We are happy to do a part 2 as well, because I mean, a lot of people couldn't join. So for anybody that's dropping off, thank you for joining us. Send us your questions. We want to keep, this is all.
Yeah, and then you can, if you go to the Substack, people may not know there's a chat function in the Substack for the Food is Health Substack.
Yes.
Very specifically, it's a little obscure in the app, but for the Food is Health Substack, and we post a little bit there, that's a good place to just sort of add your comments, and then we can sort of respond to this, this AMA a little bit down that path.
So before I just want to kind of ground this, or I want to put a little bit of a framework around this for anybody that's on. We have such a broad audience that we write to, going from soil to food to healthcare. If you're on the healthcare side and you're saying, oh my gosh, how did we just swing all the way from funding lifestyle medicine docs to soil restoration? The answer is, if you're that doc, you're the one that's saying, you guys, I need you, Miss Patient who has type 2 diabetes, to be getting as nutrient dense as possible of kale, for example. I want you to get as much, of as much fiber, as much vitamin C, as many minerals, all the stuff that I want you to get out of food. It's really important so that you can heal your insulin resistance, for example, your metabolic instability, your hormonal imbalance. Well, right now, most consumers will say it's too expensive for me to eat healthy. I can't afford to buy that produce. It's untenable for me. Well, if we all of a sudden invest in getting back to scale with regenerative farm and regenerative, specialty crops, now all of a sudden the supply demand equation changes dramatically. So the same way that I just spoke on a healthcare basis to say the money hasn't been available to cover the gap to get from sickness, the treatment of sickness, to the reversal of disease, right? That gap to get from A to B. This is the same equivalent on the farm side, the soil side, to say we got to cover the gap of getting from cheap calories to nutrient density and affordable nutrition. So it's pretty wild to watch what you and I have wanted to see happen in simultaneous parallel streams actually happening, right? So back to the 700 million, the focus is on whole farm planning that addresses every major resource concern, soil, water, and natural vitality, under a single conservation framework. Producers can bundle multiple regenerative practices into one application. It is designed for both beginning and advanced producers. They are also establishing a Chiefs Regenerative Agriculture Advisory Council to keep the regenerative pilot program grounded in practical producer-led solutions. And it is meant to also drive public-private partnerships within NRCS conservation programs. And as somebody who worries about the environment myself, I understand that we're doing a lot of really horrible things, but I am very excited to see that this is happening. So what do you have to add to that one, Carter?
I think I know that the folks behind this are very thoughtful and very producer-led. They tend to they lean a little bit out of the organic side of the world, so a little bit less from what we call chemical farming sometimes.
Yeah.
So the origins are people from that community, but they touch sort of the larger scale. I think that this community also is sort of not smallholder, and there's a little bit of that smallholder conversation, but it feels like what they're doing here is not smallholder, which I know that there's a lot of affinity towards smallholder, but I think if we're going to really produce nutrient dense food at scale, it just the sophistication. Someone characterized regenerative is it's a lot more brain work. It's cognitive load to farm regeneratively, and regenerative can be, and we know examples of, and will be, cost parity to conventional farming. but it does have a higher cognitive load, which means you want to put like a full person on it and your staff. And if you're a smallholder farm, that's tough to do. But if you're a larger operation, it's easier. So I think and it's all being drawn out of NRCS. So it's Jimmy is really the one driving this, but he's got a lot of good people behind him. In addition to his focus.
So let me go to the questions. So let me just go to. So there was a question asked about system A, B, and C. Can we give definitions of that? Because it's kind of, it's new jargon. So back in April, I'm going here to kind of look for all of this. I'm going to put a link in here in the chat for anybody that hasn't. There's a whole series of articles. And if you just do a search,
let's give it. So system A is really what evolution gave us. Evolution, over 350,000 years of human life, has produced, what we saw up through the 1800s. If you eat these things, your body metabolizes them. These things, food is designed around this way. That's system A. It's the basic. Humans are designed to eat in a particular way. System B, when humans started accelerating and growing at a faster pace because of industrialization, system B was the response of how do we produce more calories in scale? And then with the introduction of what's called the Rockefeller model, which is
and the Flexner, they go back to the Flexner report and the Carnegies.
Was hey, science has a lot to play here. Science can figure out how to solve these diseases. And as you sort of get through the Spanish flu and the beginnings of antibiotics, we really started to say that science knows the answer here on the health side. And on the food side, we said we can change production to go from 20, 30 bushels per acre to 300 bushels an acre corn. And so we went from sort of like the 40s until current, till 2010, 2020, in which we really became dependent on systems to produce scale. And in so doing, really took nutrition out of the crops, but produced large scale food at a low cost and produced breakthroughs in healthcare and success in healthcare that was very science based.
Yes.
And we sort of separated ourselves from evolution. So system B is cheap calories. It's healthcare at scale.
Moonshot medicine, too, is what I like to say.
Moonshot medicine, that there's going to be these great breakthroughs that are going to solve the hardest problems, and we should spend money on the hardest problems to get there. And, if we get sick from diabetes, don't worry, because healthcare will have an answer. But we went through that sort of method, which we'll call system B. Most classically, system B it's cheap calories at scale. So we ended famine globally.
And the monetization of sickness.
And so those are things that were productive during system B. And system C says, what can we take the best that we understand from nature through evolution and what it's optimized to? Yes. And what can we take from the best of science to understand the sort of tweaks for the modern society? And how do we deliver that in an affordable package? So where food was optimizing to yield and healthcare was optimizing the moonshots, in a system C world is how do we get affordable nutrition instead of cheap yield, affordable nutrition that eliminates chronic disease. And from a system C health standpoint, allows healthcare to focus on acute disease, not have to treat chronic disease, reduce the cost of that, take the chronic disease cost out, and that back on making sure that we have affordable nutrition.
Yep.
But we've got a couple articles to go into more depth.
We do. And I put one link in. So Grace, I put a link into one article, but if you go out into the Substack and just do a search, there's like a little, like magnifying thingy up there, and you just type in system A or system B, you'll get I think we've written 6 or 7 different articles that go into different aspects of it. We've done it from the food perspective. We've done it from the healthcare perspective. I think we've really unpacked this was really between April and June is when we really defined what System C would look like for both, and the background we did. And we also did a really deep dive into on both food and health, which food includes soil, of what got us to where we were, which Carter just summarized, but like a lot more detail. Some of the food science, like there's a lot of really deep information for anybody that wants to geek out.
It's important. A couple of things around this. The construct is really designed to sort of say, look, these are okay things. It's good that evolution figured out how to get humans and food and the planet to work together. It's good that we figured out in System B how to scale things. But we're now at a point that we solved worldwide famine. So
Correct.
Now we need to move over to getting nutrition back into. So we really shouldn't be taking this complaint. The other part of this is the construct helps us talk about solutions. So, well, that's a System B perspective, or that's a System C perspective. And so it allows us to take some of the ideas that are coming together and really orchestrate it. I think that the mindset that we stumble across sometimes is very much like what Clay Christensen would talk about in disruptive innovation of like, in this particular case, in a System C world, we're optimizing to affordable nutrition. In a System B world, we were optimizing to cheap calories. So the outcome that we're after. System C, we're trying to focus on metabolic stability. So our outcome-based measures are different, which means the system to deliver the solution is different.
Well, we're actually, I mean, I would say System C is actually back to human outcomes of health, which is completely different. Yeah. But okay, so that's the answer to the question around System A, B, and C in a quick hit manner. Hi to Sue Woods. Your ears probably were burning this morning. Sue's on, and Sue, if you're still on, we need to talk. Your ears should have been burning this morning because you were brought up. You are needed. I will be calling. So happy Friday, Sue. Secondly, there was a comment made, consumers by Samantha, consumers are very interested in regen products for health benefits, but market research is finding that despite expressing interest, consumers don't actually buy in the store. We need better messaging around health benefits. And then Samantha also added, interesting that it's excluding organic in talking about the 700 million. There's been a big controversy over organic versus regen. So, various points. I'm not sure if you want to take those.
No, I will. So I think that the data, groceries are designed to end cap people into CPG products, and most grocery makes their profit based on slotting fees for positioning product at store. If you look at the data, if consumers are buying on the digital platform for a store, they over-index 8% towards whole food, which would include regen. It's a more obscure point, but I think regen needs to become a store brand in which the stores do define. It's a really obscure point, but if the stores sort of say, this is what we mean by regen, and we hear the proof points that the nutrition is higher, and when you scan it or when you look at the data, we can tell you exactly what the nutrients are, and we've got more real-time data. So the whole concept of how they market it, I think they're starting to move down that path, and as they move down that path, consumers are going to get much more engaged on it. And the problem with organic is it did not break through. It's grown, but it hasn't broken through. So I think for it to break through, that the grocery needs to figure out how to position and market it in a way that they know how to do. And so I think you may see some shifts, but we definitely are seeing interesting data shifts that if a consumer is on the digital platform and is not seeing the slotting and the end caps and the in-store marketing hitting them to tell them to buy potato chips, that when they're on the digital app, they are moving over to the regen products. But the regen is still limited in the marketplace. The organic versus regen, I may get myself in trouble here a little bit. Organic, because it was a grower brand, to some degree, the standards were controlled by growers. So if I'm an organic producer, I want to increase the value of, I want to limit supply. Limit supply is you are more rigid on the standards by which organic is defined. And so there's a little bit of sort of positioning there that has limited organic supply. What regen is, some people are like, what is regen? Regen, in my mindset, is nutrient density and more carbon in the ground, and is a method of production that produces higher quality food that necessarily is not just about getting rid of chemicals, but you do need to get rid of chemicals to increase that carbon and increase the production output. So regen is optimizing to nutrients and carbon in the soil, where organic was optimizing to the elimination of certain chemicals. And so I see regen as more of an outcome-based result measure type growing system.
Yep.
But I think we're still sort of defining like what are those outcome-based measures, and that's because it's expensive to measure, and we're investing to reduce those costs.
Yes.
So helps, but
so the last question, unless another one comes in, is does GLP-1 have any long-term medical benefits to the human body? If not, why are we seeing so much funding being given to it? A quick fix is not optimal health if the consumption of nutrient-dense food for those who need the help that GLP-1 may help. So I'm going to weigh in on this for a second, a minute or two, and then let you weigh in on it. So I'm one of those people that's not a big proponent of pharma. If you know me, you'll know I'm not. I will step back and actually say it's not even so much about pharma. I'm a root cause girl. So I'm like that in life. Like, what's causing that to happen, and let's fix it. And that's what probably drives me the most crazy about healthcare, is that it's like Captain Obvious at the rescue every day of like, well, if you just buy different food and eat different food and change how you live your life, things would be better. I've now realized that it's not so easy, and it's also really judgy, because we have manufactured a lifestyle that makes us sick, and it is the commercial lifestyle. So like, it's kind of impossible to go up against. So I don't have that sort of like blame piece anymore. But everyone is trying to get back to healthy. People love healthy, and GLP-1s are different. As Sean just pointed out, they are actually a bit of a root cause type of pharma. So they are foundationally about reducing inflammation. And if you know anything about metabolic disorder and hormonal disorder, it really all does come back to chronic inflammation. And so food, we all know food is a primary driver of inflammation, right? There's lots of things, but food is one of the primary drivers of it. And to Sean's point, GLP-1s also can address that inflammation through a pharmaceutical intervention. And it is very difficult from a pharmaceutical perspective to impact that as effectively as GLP-1s do. I happen to have a strong bias is we should be using GLP-1s in conjunction with lifestyle modification so that people understand how to support them as well. As Sean said, there's also the whole cytokine component to this. I won't get overly geeky because I could. Sean and I regularly do this ourselves. But the bottom line from a food perspective is just for most people, it's not just as simple as eating healthy. They need a GLP-1 to come in and help them either in the short term or to some extent in the long term. I think from a big picture perspective, GLP-1s can be very effective when linked with lifestyle behavioral change and then integrated in with food itself. And when that entire picture changes, now we're really going after root cause. So I will hand it to you, Carter, on the GLP-1.
System C envisions a world in which healthcare is N of 1. Meaning, and what that means is consumers figure out how they want to manage their life figuring out how to manage their life is reducing the friction to fixing the things in their life. If you're 70 pounds overweight and you need to exercise and you need to diet, it's rational to say, I get on a GLP-1, I lose 30 pounds, I can now move around more easily, I can start to exercise, and I can bring on phase 2, which might be diet and exercise, or because maybe when you're 70 pounds overweight, you get more joint pain or whatever. So there, you can rationally say that in a stair-step kind of way, that GLP-1s have a fit. Technology-wise, we're in the early generations of GLP-1s. There are a lot of other effects. Like I know somebody who had a heart transplant that she's now on GLP-1s, and it's preventing some of her kidney resistance on her anti-rejection drugs. So the technology of the platform is a very interesting platform, and it falls into the class of platforms not unlike what metformin or aspirin or statins, where these are generalized platforms that are beneficial. What we hear out of Novo and Lilly is they want to integrate nutrition into their programs. Lilly Direct is starting to do that. Novo is looking at other formulations, for example, that might be on the supplement side. They both are looking at a nutritional component to fit into the treatment and sort of shifting it. In their case, it's economic interest to have somebody on a GLP-1 for a long term. I think that the important thing that GLP-1s have identified that we've heard out of Lilly is Lilly never thought somebody would auto-inject themselves or stick a needle in themselves or treat them. They just didn't think that this was something that consumers would do. And so now they've opened up their thinking and sort of saying, look, consumers are willing to do a lot more to take care of themselves than we thought they are. And so we have new products that we're going to bring to it that are pharma related, and there are going to be pharma related things. And I don't think we ultimately healthcare is an N of one. Each individual in a system C world, our vision is that each individual, we all have 10 or 15 things we can do to lose our weight. What works for one person is different maybe than for another person. There are 10 to 15 things still exist. And so in a system C world, what we're concentrating on is reducing the friction. That friction is, I've got these 10 choices, which one will most optimize for me? I've got these 10 choices, which ones can I afford? I have these 10 choices, which one will have the most likely beneficial outcome for me? And so from a system C world, we're in all the above options and then try to bias people towards a direction. But there will be people who will be lifetime on GLP-1. The final thing I'll say on this is the big unlock, the big Christmas gift that we got with COVID is the same kind of Christmas gift we got with HIV. When HIV came out, we didn't understand retroviruses. We started to understand viruses. Once we understood retroviruses, we developed immunotherapy. Everybody who did immunotherapy worked on HIV in the 80s and did immunotherapy for cancer in the 90s. In a similar way, all the work that we've done in COVID was ultimately not a respiratory disease, it was an inflammatory disease. And it unlocked a lot of our perspective on inflammation. Inflammation is the trigger to many things in systems, and we don't have a lot of controls on inflammation. And I think pharmaceutical-wise, we're going to see that derivatives of GLP-1 help deal with off-target effects of inflammation from a lot of different things, and that will be a very important drug platform for dealing with inflammation. And we just haven't even unlocked. We still probably have 10 years of pharmaceutical innovation that's going to go down that path. That's really going to unlock Alzheimer's and other diseases that we don't fully understand. The microbiome is closely tied to that too, but there's still a lot of science here, and we're early generations.
Yeah. So let me hit this. Yeah. So Sean just said bingo. So nice work. And Chris Geisler, I love it. Hi, Chris. He said, agreed on N of one. And he said that before you then launched back in on N of one. So there you go. And his point was contending with the complexities seems only possible by being consumer centric. So a different combination of parts per different people. And that is something that we've talked about is scalable N of one personalized medicine, which is why Sean and I developed PCOS.com. because it is meant to be a marketplace that sends people to the very specific different interventions that are known to work for PCOS in a way that they can put their different pieces parts together on their own, right? Because healthcare doesn't do that today. So that's why we're experimenting with PCOS.com to give people license and choice of an more of an open market mentality.
Well, and let's put let's put a point of reference here. So people have got to start making a decision of what their reference point is. So what do I mean? A system B reference point is you're going to die, and we're going to try to make it so that your pathway to death, that you live a little bit longer, we'll spend a bunch of money, and we won't try to correct your underlying behavior, but we'll deliver the moonshots that keep you alive. So that's
$5 trillion on it.
And I'm going to call that N of 20 million. That's N of 20 million. Sometimes Ellen's called that the Death Star, and that you're being sucked into the tractor beam.
The tractor beam
is sucking, and that's N of 20 million. So you have a disease class, there are 20 million people in it, and you're all going to be treated the same. You know, you can have any solution you want as long as it's
dun, 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 dun,
so
dun,
that's
dun,
N of 20 million. N of 1 is I have these great customized solutions for me. Now we know N of 1's not going to exactly happen, and we know N of 20 million exists. The answers could be like N of 10,000 or N of 50,000, in which there's a persona case that pretty much there's a solution space that these 5 things work with this class of people in this right way to get them to optimize and increase health span and lifespan. The frame of reference point that I think we all have to decide for ourselves, are we at N of 20 million trying to get to N of 2,000 or 20,000, or are we N of 1 settling at N of 20,000? I don't know if this makes a point. This is like, there is a point where the market's going to balance out.
Yes.
Are we trying to get to N of 1? And I think that the shift I have made in my mind is, if we're going to get to N of 20,000 correctly, we have to do it with the objective desire to have N of 1, and then it sort of falls into where the market wants to be, instead of trying to redesign system B N of 20 million.
Yes.
To be repackaged in a way to serve N of 20,000.
I would argue that right now, the only thing holding us back from N of 1 accelerating at light speed because of AI now, the only thing holding us back really is consumers' ability to navigate and direct their dollars where they want. Because there's already $9 trillion combined between, I just want to say this out loud, there are $2.6 trillion being spent to food. There's $1 to $2 trillion being spent on wellness that's not redundant to healthcare. And then there's it's 5.3 trillion is what's estimated for 2025 that's being spent on healthcare. That's $9 trillion that is being spent today on all of this by the market. The problem is that the healthcare system is getting 5 trillion of that today, and consumers are not making the decisions on how that $5 trillion is being spent, either through their health insurance, through the coverage that they're getting, through any of that. And so therefore, right?
Because the market is sort of settled on the system. So
correct.
Here's another way I just thought of, in terms of what we're trying to do.
I don't know how everybody's still holding on, by the way. Like, I keep thinking that we need to drop, but just more people are joining. So I'm like, all right, fine.
In terms of our mission here, our Cressonian mission, which I'm not going to confuse anybody what that means right now, but I'm going to use the term.
2026, Cressonia, baby.
Our Cressonian mission here is, are you a Cressonian? If you're a System B person, we're going to have to get a name. If you're a System C person, you're a Cressonian. So the the frame of reference here is we have System B consumers who are limited in their options, and we have System C consumers who are empowered, have price power, have cash, and want to change the system to N of 1. So we just took all these HSA people that we talked to at the beginning and now have enabled them as System C consumers. They are Personians in a sense where they want to buy from a System C perspective, but they have to settle for something in between. And what our job now is to identify, the more we get people on that side, when you get a barroom brawl, 2 people will get in a fight, and then the third person wouldn't get into a fight themselves, but now that they see those other 2 people are fighting, they jump in. And then the fourth person's like, oh, 3 people are in a fight, I'm going to jump in. So the way we're thinking about this is what do we need to get over on the System C consumer side first, so that the modicum of success that they achieve encourages more people to go from being System B consumers to System C consumers. And that'll change over time, but we slowly but surely we want to bring those cohorts over, but optimize the system.
But DIY healthcare through social media is already happening. I saw it first. I mean, first of all, we all see it, but I saw it live in Technicolor when I went to the Pneumonia Summit. It is that System C is in place. People are already testing things. The issue is that there are these, I would say, tremendous innovations that belong in System C, but they have trapped themselves in a System C mindset because they don't have time. They don't have a runway with the investment thesis that was used to start up their business to be able to try and get to the consumer, right? There's not a way to get to the consumer. So they're forced into asking System B to push it out to the consumer, which is my point, that I believe the fact that all of the dollars in healthcare for the most part have been spent on behalf of the consumer by their employer, by the insurance company, everybody else, right? So the more that we can pull out of that, extract out of that and hand back to the consumer, which, by the way, we have in essence done by giving over 50% of people high deductible, high copay health plans, right? Because they already have to spend their own money to engage. Yeah. The more we can do to accelerate that, people have demonstrated that they recognize that owning I would say my parents' generation, not so much, but with our generation down, and even the boomers in between, which, I mean, I feel my children would tell you I'm a boomer, like we're right on the cusp, right? Is we all understand that health is a very personalized endeavor, that the doctor can only help you so much. You got to figure a lot of stuff out on your own, right? So, yeah. So yes. Okay. So let me try to summarize. I'm gonna, because there's oddly, and I don't know if this is the first time we've live streamed on Substack, so maybe I'm misunderstanding how this little counter up at the top, which I tell myself not to look at because I don't want it to go backwards. It just keeps going up. So I'm going to assume that there are a number of new folks that were not here for the first piece where we kind of ran through the programs. So just to summarize, the 4 programs that we covered in this, which you will be able to go back and listen to this whole long-winded diatribe. I will tell you that if you don't really want to listen to us really diving into how we could propel cash in people's pockets, you can probably skip over the first 20 minutes because we kind of went on a long tirade about the ACA subsidies and that. I found it interesting, but just fair warning. I would say that kind of like 30 minutes to an hour mark of this thing is where we kind of ran through the programs. But to summarize, we highlighted the fact that we are handing, if the enhanced subsidies being paid for consumers today in the form of health insurance premium subsidization, if they go away, but more importantly, if they shift into an HSA, some portion of them shift into an HSA, that will rapidly accelerate the creation of System C by giving consumers a whole new pot of money.
You got more money in a System C consumer purchasing behavior.
And that's the Cassidy-Crapo, and I'm sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. That's the Cassidy-Crapo Republican attempt. Rick Scott also has one out there, but his is not what we talked about. We talked about the Cassidy Crapo one. Okay. That is kind of component one of this whole unlocking and creation of a new market, which we're calling System C. We then talked about the disintermediation of, or basically the opening up of half of the Medicare population to a whole new set of solutions, of health solutions that today cannot sell to that market, that with the new access model that CMS released, if you are a Part B supplier, you have to be a Part B supplier, there will be this access program that you can apply for to get outcomes-based payment to offer your programs, and it's meant to be lifestyle, and it is for 5 specific, I didn't say this before, it is for 5 specific disease states, or it's either 4 or 5. The reason that I'm kind of vague on it is because it includes cardio, kidney, metabolic. So like it even includes prediabetes. Like they specifically list prediabetes. So everything that you and I talk about, which is metabolic, dysfunction and the primary driver of chronic disease, it is square in the middle of who access is meant to cover. So healthcare is getting ready to wake up and realize that there's a whole new sheriff in town in terms of a whole bunch of options that are going to go direct to consumer and say, I got you covered, man. I can reverse your chronic disease. Forget about the disease management over there. Like, come see me. That's the access model. And then the third piece we talked about is that includes the tempo model, which tempo, and it's in conjunction. It doesn't have to be done together, but tempo for right now appears to only work with access. But tempo is the FDA's sort of waiver of certain wearable devices to be able to be deployed to that Medicare population. So access participants will be able to leverage and use and deploy wearables devices under that therapeutic treatment that would not normally be allowed as part of a disease treatment because of FDA clearance. This tempo program is meant to give that waiver. So that's the access/tempo model. And then the last CMS release that we are kind of this healthcare piece is the Elevate model, which is 100 million, 30 participants, lifestyle and functional. I did not also say that. It is lifestyle medicine and functional medicine. And again, it is for established programs that are willing to offer the services that Medicare doesn't cover through that. It'll be $3 million per participant for a 3-year time period you're signing up for. You have to track and measure the outcomes. You also have to have a program that has demonstrated success already. So you have to be an experienced program or provider in the lifestyle and or functional space in order to qualify for that money. There will be a cohort in 2026 and a cohort then again in 2027. And then the last piece we covered was the soil side of things. And on that piece, I would say that's the whole, how do we bridge the gap of creating the infrastructure to deliver disease prevention and disease reversal? Because that's one of the big complaints is consumers don't have the money, which we just talked about with the HSAs. Consumers don't have access to the programs. The people that are offering the really good programs can't bill under the traditional fee-for-service environment. Well, we just got rid of that through the access model, right, for half the Medicare population. And then the other complaint is there's a gap, there's a delta of being able to fund what's needed here to be able to stand these programs up. And now the 100 million has come out to fund that delta and fund that gap. And not with new entrants that promise it, AKA capital-backed, scale up and do it crappy. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, Carter. Not trying to be mean against the traditional investment thesis, but there you go. And the last thing we talked about was on the soil side. Again, people are like, well, we can't ever make nutrition affordable. Well, now we're getting 700 million dumped into the system handed into the system to try to support a conversion over to regenerative practices, to really try and fill some of the void on a conservation basis and to really help us towards nutrient density. So it's a pretty big friggin' week for us in System C.
So we will, a couple things here. We'll repost this for people.
Yes.
If you go to the Substack, there's a way to get to a chat function, which allows us to have some follow-on conversation to this. I guess we should think about if people like this format or something, let us know. Maybe we should be, because we think like we've got all these ideas we got to write out that sometimes they're easier to just talk out. So maybe we should do this more, but do get onto that chat function and add some more questions. And then we are thinking a little bit, should we build a database of System C companies that are like in that mode, because grocery will be looking for them. We've talked to Lilly Direct, and Lilly Direct is looking for partners, and we're starting to get questions about that. And so we're thinking, like, should we be building some of those tools?
Correct. And also we talked about having a marketplace with them. We already do this with PCOS.com, but we talked, yesterday or day before of like, maybe we just need to go ahead and step up and put something out there equivalent to TrueMed for all those system players to start having access.
So we are thinking through that as to whether that's beneficial, and maybe someone's got some of those answers, or maybe someone can help us build that database, write the database so that we can then make it available to sort of the food to our community. So there will just a lot of things moving at once. We have a pretty clear vision of where we want to be. We are going to hold a conference in the April timeframe to try to work on that.
We're doing a live we are doing a Food Health Network live event. We are actually, because we have a channel through them, and we are doing it next Monday afternoon. And we will be talking about the agenda for track 2, which is Food Health Network live. They were the Food is Medicine Network live last year. We will be offering a half-day innovation workshop the morning leading up to the conference. Then we're going to have a track called the how-to version for those that want to move beyond just the food is medicine conversation and move into the practical side of actually unlocking all of this. And so we're going to bring a much broader lens. So also some of you that I see were commenting here or in here, we will want you to speak. We'll be reaching out, but we're going to talk about that agenda and our thoughts next Monday. We already have it on the books.
Carter. Yeah, so we'll get this on. We'll post this out somewhere.
Yes, and then everybody listening, of course, we have to plug that the more that you can get the word out about us and what we're doing in the Substack, the better. It's not about the money side of this. It's actually just about what we've learned with Substack. Apparently, is like 10,000 is a magic number for kind of broad. It takes us to another level of distribution for people to be aware of this. And that's our objective, is to convene as many of the people that need to be a part of this as possible. So we appreciate all of you. We've had a lot this week. We've had a lot of referral inbounds, and the more you guys can do that, the better. Because we're getting a lot of, thank you. And we, first of all, thank you for thanking us, because we don't get paid to do this. So it's important for us to know that this actually adds value to your day, keeps us going. But the more that you can spread the word and get folks on, then the more it helps kind of the momentum build. So
great.
And we're not TikTok people. So we don't go out and do things that make us particularly viral. We're kind of boring. We're kind of viral. Yeah, apparently if we did certain things like ice bucket challenge, we super popular. We don't do things like that. So we just geek out on System C, but that's okay. We got people that encourage.
My ice bucket challenge was yesterday. It was to walk on the dog and slipped on the sidewalk, and I think I either broke my ankle or sprained it. So, but I'm not going to go I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm going to self-medicate.
Are you? I'm not going to lie. The whole ankle, unless you have a broken, I will tell you. If you do,
it's not broken. I don't think it's broken.
Because if it is, you're going to be like my dad, who walks with his foot swinging sideways now.
It's not broken. It's a ligament.
Okay.
Or something.
All right.
So they're going to tell me to stick it in a boot and do that for 6 weeks.
All right. So I get to see you in a boot if I see you at JP Morgan. Also, we're talking about doing a Crusonia event at JP Morgan. So any of you here that are going to be at JP Morgan, send us a note to see if that is something of interest. So anywho. Peace out.
Hour and 48 minutes.
That's a record.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.